Okay, so again, I will introduce Dave Gasson from the Housing Advisory Group to tell us what's happening regarding the low-income housing tax credit. Dave?
Thanks, Cindy, and it's a pleasure to be with everybody. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I am out of the office on assignment today in a much nicer environment, so I'm not on a landline. So if anybody has trouble hearing me, just let me know. So as we were saying, Senator Cantwell, who is our LAHDC champion, is preparing to introduce a broad housing bill. She first announced the package 3 weeks ago at a big press conference that she had out in Seattle, Washington, which got a lot of coverage, at least in the industry publications and media out there. We have been working with she and her staff on this proposal for quite some time. It includes a lot of the things that we have been trying to accomplish that we did not get done in HERA and did not get done in the last legislative cycle. And I'll run through just some of the larger points, and I'll give you an update on where it stands. The biggest piece of the proposal is a 50% increase in the low-income housing tax credit. It would obviously increase resources for everybody across the country. It is not nearly as much as we need, but it is as much as we and the senator believe we could potentially attain at this time, although that will be difficult. The entire proposal is being scored right now by Joint Tax, but the industry did a preliminary score of how much that would cost, and the 50% increase alone would be $6.5 billion. That's billion with a B, so it is not inexpensive at all. But we figure now's the time because Speaker Ryan and his folks on the Republican side of the House have a poverty agenda that we are pushing with him that so far he is open to. We haven't talked price tag with him, but he's open to including housing as part of his poverty agenda. And we think now's as good a time as any, especially after coming off of our success last year in the 9% fix. Speaking of the 9% fix, the second piece of the proposal would be making permanent the 4% credit for bonds and acquisitions. That will also have a steep price tag. We have not figured out how much that will be, and we'll find out from Joint Tax on that one. But needless to say, that also will not be expensive. But as everybody knows, we've been wanting to get the 4% fixed for bonds for quite some time, and we figure, again, now's as good a time as any to push for that. Also included is the income averaging proposal. For those of you who are not familiar with the income averaging proposal, it would basically allow developments to go up to 80% of AMI as long as the entire development or the affordable units in the development averaged 60. We've discussed this for quite some time. It's been in the president's budget for at least the last 3 budget cycles, and we are pushing that at this time. Another thing that will be included is making state tax credits exempt against federal taxation. As of right now, they are not, and that's an issue for a lot of folks, both on the investment side. So in the proposal, all the state tax credits or affordable housing tax credit would be exempt against federal taxes. And then there are a number of other provisions, some of them functory, some of them not as much geared towards increasing resources, but increasing efficiency. There's some Indian housing provisions that are in there, student housing, and broadening the definition of what would be allowable under the student housing provision. And once the proposal is finalized, the proposal is not yet finalized, we're still in the drafting phase, and as I said, things are being scored. We will obviously release it to the industry for them to see. Senator Cantwell is hoping to introduce the housing bill by the end of this month, although that calendar is ticking by quickly. We are waiting for Joint Tax to come back with a score on the larger proposals. Once we get the score, Senator Roberts, who has been our Republican champion for some time, will take a look at the bill and let Senator Cantwell know at that time whether or not he will come on board as the lead Republican co-sponsor. We very much hope that will happen. And he and his tax counsel, Chris Allen, who we've worked with for quite some time, have told us he very much would like to be the lead Republican sponsor on the bill. But again, it's going to come down to cost, because if the bill comes out costing a ridiculous amount of money, and of course that's a matter of opinion on what's ridiculous, and as I said, right now we're looking at a 50% increase being $6.5 billion. If this is a $15 billion bill, I think we're going to have a hard time getting anybody on board. But if it's relatively reasonable, especially with the resources that we can advertise that would be going to the states with this provision, and Senator Roberts does come on board, we feel relatively confident we'd be able to get additional Republican and Democratic co-sponsors for the legislation. All that being said, I want to be very clear with everybody. This proposal is not going anywhere this year. As we've talked about before, this is not a big legislative year for Congress. They are going to get very little accomplished. As a matter of fact, they've been able to get what they needed to get done accomplished, and the budget specifically speaks to that since they cannot come to a budget agreement. But this is laying the groundwork for tax reform, which we do believe will have a lot of wind in its sails once we have a new Congress and a new president, no matter who he or she is. And better that we get going on our housing proposal now and get it prepared and vetted and get co-sponsors on board so that when tax reform takes flight in the next Congress, we're ready to push a housing agenda as part of it. Because whatever happens here, this will be part of our push on the tax reform side for housing. Now, all that being said on the Senate side, nothing much is happening on the housing front in the House. As I related before, Pat Tiberi has been encouraging us to meet with a lot of the more conservative members of his conference in the House who have been pushing back against tax provisions, including housing provisions, to their members on the Ways and Means Committee. Pat and a number of our supporters on Ways and Means who successfully got the 9% fix through in the tax bill at the end of last year actually caught a lot of guff from members of the more conservative members of the Republican conference for doing so. And so Pat has tasked us to go meet with a lot of these members and try to convince them as to why these programs are important and specifically important in their districts. And we've been trying to do that. You would be stunned at how difficult this is, and having conversations with some of these folks about the importance of housing in the district, even when we take specific properties that have been developed there and show them who is being served by them and the response we get. An ordinary average person would be dumbfounded and somewhat frustrated. Fortunately, we're somewhat used to this response, so we don't react so viscerally, but it is disappointing to see some of these folks' opinions towards things as basic as providing affordable housing and services to folks in their districts. But that's what we've been charged to do by Pat and his colleagues on Ways and Means. We're working on it. Until we make a little more headway, Pat at this time is not prepared to push a really strong and broad housing agenda. We do know now that Chairman Brady of Ways and Means will be coming out with the blueprint for their tax reform agenda sometime in June. And we're all anxious to see what it is. We do not believe at this point that they're going to talk specifics, so we don't expect anything in there in regards to credit specifically or the low-income housing tax credit, but we will get an idea of what Chairman Brady and, for that matter, Speaker Ryan are looking at in regards to tax reform going forward. The Speaker wants to have everything lined up in regards to their House agenda by the time the presidential election takes place. If you've been paying attention to all of what's going on the legislative front in conjunction with the presidential, the Speaker very much wants to have an agenda before the new president-elect, no matter if it's a Democrat or Republican, to say, this is what the House would want to work on. Now, even if it's a member of his own party, he's not waiting for them. So we are not standing idly by. We are very much working with the Speaker, with Chairman Brady, and with Pat Tiberi to make sure that housing is a piece of that agenda. And obviously, we are coming out to all of the folks around the country to get them to support that agenda as well. And that's pretty much what's going on right now on the tax side. Cindy, I don't know if anybody has any questions on anything.
Well, let's find out. Thanks, Dave. You can star 7 to unmute your phone. Questions?
Hi, Dave. It's Joyce from the Housing Alliance. Hey, thanks for getting on. Just a quick question. You mentioned the conservative members on Ways and Means. Are there folks in Pennsylvania that you know of that we could, I guess it's more a question, if there are people in Pennsylvania on the House side that we need to do some work with, we can help you with that. And so given it's sort of in the future, is there anything we should be doing now with our Senate members or House members in addition to targeting the more conservative Republican members in the House?
Well, Joyce, thank you for the question. And at the same time, you know me well enough that if someone had come and beat us over the head about a member from Pennsylvania, I very quickly would have been on the phone with you to do that. That being said, we are still not making much progress with Senator Toomey. We do plan on going back in and speaking with him. in trying to get him to at least have a succinct conversation about if he has any issues with our and I can guarantee you right now he is not going to like the Cantwell bill. Even if Roberts is on board, Senator Toomey has made it clear, his staff has, that he is not on board for increasing resources for housing. We would be shocked and dumbfounded if he was. That's just not, that's not the cloth that he's made of. But at the same time, when you look at the need nationwide and especially in Pennsylvania in regards to the resources that are not being provided to the states, we would hope that he would at least voice some support for it. So my suggestion is, as much as you can continue to work on Senator Toomey, it'd be helpful.
Okay.
Considering the election cycle, we think he would want to say something positive about resources for folks at the lower economic spectrum, but I don't pretend to know what's going on in his campaign. The other thing I will say, and I think I brought this up last time, if I didn't, I apologize, but I think everybody also knows that they're finally going to make allocations to the Housing Trust Fund.
Right.
And the last time I checked, and we might have discussed this before, it's coming back to me, I think Pennsylvania is in the $4.3 million bracket or somewhere around there.
Yeah, just under 4 now that they figured out that the trust fund is subject to sequestration. So we're at like 3.9.
Yeah, but, I mean, the resources are going to be distributed no matter what the Congress would like to see happen. At least on this first round, they're going to be outgoing. So those will be released, I believe, the end of the second quarter or early summer to the states. So that's one piece of good news that's coming out this year.
Yep. This is Cindy. Dave, I will add, I know that Toomey obviously is conservative, and it is difficult. Something that I can't say we've been successful totally in his office, but that we have found useful in advocating for affordable homes with more conservative folks is to make a connection with cost savings elsewhere in the budget. And so I think the strongest argument is the housing and health connection. And, I would encourage you to look, and I can send you lots of information if you don't have it already, but that talking about spending for housing alone is often a non-starter, but talking about investing in housing as a way of improving people's health and bringing down expenditures for Medicaid gets people's attention. So, I'd be happy to talk with you more about that.
And the other thing that I will add is, and I've referenced these before and encourage everybody to go to, on the rentalhousingAction.org website, we have all the state and district fact sheets. And something new that we've added to those fact sheets is the demand, is that we put it in regards to what the applications have been or what the demand is for affordable housing resources versus what the actual supply is through the state and available. So we've made that contrast as well because, remember, it really has resonated with members when you said, listen, we've shown you what we've done, but look what's needed. And when we show them what's needed and what the states are asking for and so on and so forth versus the fraction of which they're actually getting. So, I mean, very few states are 2 to 1. Most of them are 3 or 4 to 1 in regards to requests versus resources. That has helped us with some members. So that's included in the fact sheets now as well.
Good. Yeah, I know Pennsylvania is usually 3 or 4 to 1. And I don't know. Anyway, good. Good. So the fact sheets are on, what's your website?
It is rentalhousingAction.org.
RentalhousingAction.org. Okay.
Yeah. And you can also access those through our website, through the housingadvisorygroup.org website. And I think you can access it through almost everybody's website, whether it's Novogradac, Resnick, NCSHA. Everybody is linked up to the Action Campaign website now. So pretty much anywhere you go, you'll be able to find a way to the website.
Good. Oh, I know what I was thinking of as you were talking about the need. The way that we often phrase it is we know how to solve these problems like homelessness or people paying 60% of their income for rent. We know how to solve the problems. We need more resources to do it. Talking about the successes as you've done, pointing to these terrific developments in each of the districts, and then pointing to the long waiting lists. Thank you. I also want to make a brief mention of the federal budget process, and Dave, maybe you can comment on that also, and then we'll turn to state stuff. But what I've seen is that this week the Senate Appropriations Committee passed the THUD, the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Bill, at $56.5 billion. And according to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, that total is, I didn't underline it, $1 billion less than last year. I also see that the HUD portion at $39.2 billion is about $900 million over last year. But I want to emphasize that last year's figure, while an improvement over 15, was not where we wanted it to be, and that if you look at the overall percentage increase since we have a 2-year agreement for raising the overall spending caps. We're now going into the second year of that. So 16 was the first year the spending cap was raised, but HUD did not see a proportionate increase, so it saw a much smaller increase than what a number of other departments got. So I want to emphasize that the work is just beginning on the fiscal year 17 budget, and it's moving along. And as I said, the Appropriations Committee in the Senate reported out their bill. But this is really the time to get in there and talk to our congressmen and senators about whatever federal programs you're using, whether it be CDBG or home or public housing, housing choice vouchers, McKinney-Vento, and any of the other programs that invite them out to see your developments, your homes, invite them out to meet your families, and really emphasize, as we said before, we know how to solve the problems, but we need the resources to do it. Dave, do you have anything briefly to add on the budget?
Yeah, and what I'll add to that is that the Senate number is a much better number to track. As I think we might have discussed before, the House is very much in turmoil in regards to the budget. They had a budget agreement all set for FY16 and 17, and they thought all they were going to have to do was pass the budget, do the appropriations bills, and they were done. But in the House, as everybody's probably familiar with, the process is blown up because the Freedom Caucus has come back and told the Speaker they want him to go ahead and cut out the $50 billion that they put in last year, which is down to $30 billion for FY17, and they cannot come to an agreement on that. We very much feel like it's going to end up as another CR, continuing resolution, because the House and the Senate will not be able to agree. But if they, which basically will level fund it. The FY17 numbers will be very close to what the FY16 numbers are. But keep an eye on it, and obviously we'll keep you updated. And if anything happens on the positive side, it would probably more likely what the Senate is passing at this time through the appropriations process. And then we'll just see what happens.
Okay, appreciate that, and we'll make this a feature of the May call then to get an update from our advocate friends in Washington. And Dave, thank you very much. Any other questions on the federal level? Star 7 to unmute. Okay, then thank you, Dave. Let's move
Great.
along.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks. So we'll move along to the state. We've got some interesting things happening, especially in the realm of blighted properties, that I also want to mention briefly before I forget that there was just a report issued by the Joint State Government Commission on homelessness, and I'll pull out my copy so I read you the exact homelessness in Pennsylvania, causes, impacts, and solutions, a task force and advisory committee report, and an extensive 200-some page report that Helen's on the line, headed this up and did a great job. There was a large advisory committee which worked really hard. This came out of an initiative in the House of Representatives, a resolution actually to appoint a legislative task force, and and provide this report with recommendations. And I think we'll feature that also. Joyce, you're on the call. Do we have anything set up?
I did want to mention, hopefully people have gotten the invite, but if not, Helen from the Joint State Commission and Diana Myers from Diana T. Myers and Associates is going to do a briefing for Happen in the Housing Alliance in Harrisburg on May 4th at 10 a.m. The plan, too, it's not scheduled yet, is to do a webinar after that, but an in-person meeting May 4th in Harrisburg. All are welcome.
Great, thank you. And then if you can't travel, we will do a webinar. And is Helen, I think you're on the phone. Is this available online anywhere?
Yes, it is available on our site, on the Joint State Government Commission site.
And do we get to that through the legislature's website, or?
This is our own.
Your own, okay. Can you give us?
We're independent, so this is our own site, and it is gsg.legis.state.pa.us.
Okay, so GSG as in joint, no, it'd be JSG as in Joint State Government.
Yes.
JSG.legis for the legislature, .state.pa.us.
Right. You can also just Google Joint State Government Commission and you will find it that way.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I want to just really recommend it to people. It's a great report, and appreciate all the work that went into it. And that's all I'm going to say right now because, as Joyce mentioned, we've got the in-person briefing coming up May 4th, and then we will pull together a webinar.
You're very welcome. Both you and Joyce contributed a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, then I want to move ahead. We have some guests on the line to talk about a new piece of legislation that's been introduced in the House that's being drafted for introduction in the Senate, dealing with what's known as expedited or fast-track foreclosure for vacant and abandoned properties. And this is something that we've worked with legislative staff on. It's something we've seen in other states where both the banking industry and the community development corporations have come together to say dealing with vacant and abandoned properties is a priority. It's good for the community to move these properties quickly. It's good for the lenders to get them through the process quickly. But we also want to be sure that as we're doing this, we include strong protections for homeowners, that we are absolutely sure that the properties are vacant and abandoned, that we are sure that no rogue lender might force a vacancy in order to use an expedited process. So we want to be sure that all the protections are in there. We've invited on today's call, I hope you're both on now, Kyle Mullins from Senator John Blake's office, and Senator Blake is from the Scranton area, and Mary Beth Doherty from Senator Argle's office from Schuylkill and surrounding counties, and they are both champions in the housing and anti-blight world. So I'm going to turn it over. Kyle, Mary Beth, are you on?
I'm here.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, and you're both of you.
Wonderful.
So take it away.
All right.
I'll go for it.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Cindy and the Housing Alliance and everyone on the call for giving us a little bit of your time. I probably missed it because we joined the call a few minutes late, but wanted to welcome Phyllis as the executive director, the incoming executive director to the Housing Alliance.
Totally forgot. Thank you.
I got that notice just this morning, and that's great news. And make sure Ms. Chamberlain knows that she has an open door at both Senator Blake and I'm sure Senator Argle's office in the Capitol building or in Scranton or Schuylkill County.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Certainly. So, I guess just a little bit of background by way of our bosses for everyone. Senator Blake has a long history in community development and housing. He started out at the Lackawanna County Redevelopment Authority fixing up houses, then was with the Community Builders Fellowship program with HUD, and then later with PNC Community Development Program. So he cut his teeth in public life in the affordable housing realm, and when Mary Beth, happy to. I'm sure you'd be happy to discuss how long Senator Argill's been a champion, for blighted, for helping to ease issues with blight in our communities.
Absolutely. When he has a great track record in the House for looking for ways to redevelop, repurpose old buildings, downtown areas. And when he came over to the Senate, he took up the cause of the late Senator Rhodes on the blight bill and the blight issue, and has taken that ball and just completely run with it. Other than probably property tax reform, it's the other issue that I think Senator Argill has become pretty widely known for trying to advocate and champion the issue of, with dealing with blighted and abandoned properties.
That's great. So it certainly natural allies with Senator Argill and Blake. I'm sorry, was someone asking a question or chiming in? Hello? Okay. Well,
and I'll remind people, they can mute their phones with a *6, and we'll have you unmute when we have time for questions. Thanks.
Okay. So, just by way of background, there is a bipartisan, bicameral task force, a blight task force in the state legislature, with who represent a host of stakeholders. The Housing Alliance being a very important stakeholder, and we've, in drafting these bills and prior bills that were successfully legislated into law, the input of the Housing Alliance was critical, was absolutely taken to heart, and the track record of this task force is actually a pretty good one as far as track records and task forces go in the legislature. So we have this piece of legislation that's been referred to committee in the House of Representatives, and we are waiting for, and that is House Bill 1954. That's 1954. In the Senate, our bill will be Senate Bill 1191. We're just waiting for official committee referral. But the language in the bill represents a months of stakeholder input. We're aware it's probably not perfect, as any bill just starting out in the legislative process is. We've already made some significant edits with the Housing Alliance's prior concerns in mind, and this is I guess this call is just an opportunity to once again let you know that we have two staff members representing bosses with perpetually open ears and minds to any additional concerns, so we can improve the bill all the more. But the intent of the bill, long and short, Cindy prefaced it, is to return, is to identify truly vacant and abandoned properties and return them to beneficial use as quickly as possible. Mary Beth, I'm not sure if you have anything to add prior to questions.
Well, I guess the other thing that I just want to stress or add on to what Carl just said, the goal is vacant and abandoned. And the process in the legislation as it's written right now, that can be determined two different ways. One through a local code enforcement process, a code enforcement officer determining it, making a determination. And there are criteria listed in the bill that I believe it's, Kyle, help me, is it at 2 right now, 2 criteria?
That's right. It has to satisfy 2 criteria on a list of many that are true indicators of vacancy and abandonment.
And it's either through a code enforcement determination at the local government level or through a court decision, a court determination. And nothing could move forward with any kind of expedited process until either one of those 2 determinations or ways of determining have been achieved. So, it's not just going to be, an attempt by a bank to steamroll over a property owner.
That's right. And I think it's important to stress that foreclosure diversion programs, like the very successful mortgage foreclosure diversion program in Philadelphia, for instance, and I know a number of other municipalities have something similar, that it is certainly no lawmaker's intention, in this language, to get around that. This is we want those programs to continue in force. We are, again, after truly vacant and abandoned properties, and want to and have worked to include every safeguard that we could possibly have imagined, and remain open to additional safeguards that may have gone under the radar up to this point.
Yeah, and I think it's another thing. I think I'm confident in saying that right now, this is we have taken. I think Kyle said months. I would almost be willing to say this has been a conversation over years at this point on the issue of lending institutions and the issue of foreclosure and zombie titles and all that kind of thing. I think this is a first step. We have finally gotten the bankers to the table to initiate discussions on foreclosure. I don't think this solves all the problems that we have with mortgage properties and all those issues, but I think it's a good step that we finally have them at the table and talking and recognizing that this problem's not going away and it's an issue that we aren't giving up on. Do we have a final solution on the issue of zombie titles? Have we twisted their arms enough to get them to concede on it? No, not yet, but we're working on it. And I think this is a good first step in moving toward that direction.
I think that's a great point, Mary Beth. There are a number of aspects in the bill where we have worked with the bankers, indicated that they were priorities to us, our bipartisan legislative offices. That there are some there were some concerns raised by the Housing Alliance that we included those such as property maintenance through these at a certain point in these procedures. So we continue to be open to edits, and we'll continue to represent your interests as valuable stakeholders to the best we can.
Yep, absolutely.
This is Cindy. Before I open it up to questions, could you describe a little bit in what ways the process gets sped up? I guess the sheriff's sale, notice.
Certainly, there are a number of compressed schedules. The process in Pennsylvania just generally is said to last anywhere between 300 to over 500 days, and it's through a number of steps and provisions through the bill. Hope to reduce that by over 200 days. So.
And I believe there's something of an incentive for a sheriff's office to schedule a sale in a timelier manner. I guess that's been one of the issues, that it's not a consistent way of scheduling sales. Each county sheriff's office doesn't have a consistent manner of scheduling sales. So I believe there's an incentive with a fee to be paid to the sheriff's office for scheduling an expedited sale once a property has been determined vacant and abandoned. I don't know if it's a $250, if I remember correctly, dollar amount. Don't quote me on the amount, but there is a fee to, I hate to use the word incentivize, but that's kind of what it would be doing to schedule an expedited sale. But it's only after it's been determined that the property is vacant and abandoned.
That's correct. Mary Beth, the scheduling of the sheriff's sale, essentially if a mortgage property was indeed certified as vacant and abandoned by one of those two processes, municipal or judicial certification,
right.
The sheriff, when they would receive an accelerated sale, it would be a fee of $500.
$500, okay.
Right.
I was shortchanging the sheriff's office.
I think the $250 comes later for removal of personal property.
Okay.
And I'll just, if I may step in, I'll just throw in by way of background that when we looked at fast-track foreclosure laws in other states, what they did very logically was amend their foreclosure laws. Pennsylvania does not have a foreclosure law per se. We have a law that deals with notice that must be given to homeowners facing foreclosure, known as Act 6. We have Act 91, which is notice of the HEMAP, the Homeowners Emergency Mortgage Assistance Program. But by and large, foreclosures are governed by court rules. And under our state constitution, the legislature cannot tell the court how to operate. Only the Supreme Court can determine that. And so we couldn't really say, well, so a hearing must be held within 30 days or things like that. And that's why the bill skips from, well, you have a determination of vacancy and abandonment, and then sort of presumes that there is still this judicial process to determine default on the loan, and goes to speeding up the process for sheriff's sale, essentially, and it also deals with easier ways of giving notice once the determination has been made. So is there anything else, Kyle or Mary Beth, that you would like to add, and then we'll ask for questions?
Other than everyone on the call should know by now how well Cindy Daly represents your the Housing Alliance's concerns and issues, and Cindy, your work is represented in this bill, and we hope to include even more input, and thank you for everything.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I concur with that. Yeah, it's this whole task force has been a model. Actually, I think other states have commented on how well both chambers work together. All caucuses have worked together on the issue, and I think with the help of the Housing Alliance, we have really 10 years ago we would not even have this bill 10 years ago had it not been for everybody coming together through that task force. And putting such an emphasis on what a problem blight and dilapidated properties has become in Pennsylvania, and getting a lot of people on board, a lot of legislators and other folks on board to try and deal with the problem. So, will this bill solve every problem? No, but if it's that many more vacant and dumpy properties that we can get resolved, then it's a winner.
Yeah, and thank you for convening the task force, Mary Beth. I mean, on behalf of obviously your bosses too, but you've been doing the legwork. So let me open it up to questions. *7 if you've muted your phone, and let's hear what's on your mind. Anyone?
Hey, Cindy, it's Jeff from Silk. Just wanted to let you know I'm on the call.
Hi, Jeff. Okay. Anyone have questions about foreclosure?
Kyle, Mary Beth, this is Devin Sanders from CLS in Philadelphia.
Hi, Devin. How are you? Thank you,
Pretty
and
good.
Thanks to I know Michael whipped some comments together in real short order. So thank you both for your work.
So, was there any discussion of blighted non-mortgage blighted properties in terms of moving those expeditiously?
You can bring it over.
The correct question is where don't I have?
I'm sorry. Did you say non-blighted
mortgage properties, like properties that are abandoned or vacant that are not subject to mortgage?
Okay, they don't have. Well, there are a number of other tools. Well, I'm sorry. You asked Kyle and
no, Mary Beth, anybody.
There are a number of other tools that don't deal with mortgages. So I mean, this really focused on mortgage foreclosure. There is, of course, tax sale foreclosure. There's conservatorship, and land banks working to acquire properties through tax sale. I know Philadelphia has land banks. So, if there are other issues that you're seeing that where they're not mortgaged properties, but there are other problems, I'd be happy to talk through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because blight, I think, is one issue that there's just not a one-size-fit-all answer to it. And one of the criticisms initially when we first started talking to the banking industry about the foreclosure issue, they came back and their argument was, well, you have enough, local municipalities have enough tools, and you have this, you have that, you have, something else. What do you need this for? You don't need this. Act 90, I guess it was, we were debating at the time. You don't need this. Why do you need this? Well, it's because there's just so many different ways, there's just so many different problems with blight, and no two problems are quite the same and can be tackled in the same way. So, yeah, Cindy's absolutely right. We just need a whole drawer, as we all keep saying, of tools that might help a local municipality deal with the problem.
Other questions? Or questions, concerns, or issues relating to mortgage foreclosure on vacant and abandoned?
I guess everyone saved their budget questions for the federal folks.
Oh, yeah.
After our track record.
Are you opening up the discussion to the state budget?
No, we'll stick to blight.
We have 15 minutes on this call. We want to solve that problem. I'm sure there are opinions. No, I think we'll skip that. Well, thank you both very much. We will be tracking this fast track bill, and we will be continuing conversations and continuing to list it, to have talk about it on these monthly calls. So I appreciate you two getting on the call today.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Cindy.
Thanks for the opportunity. Have a nice day.
Okay, have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
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 All right. Well, that worked out well. We have 15 minutes left, and I have one other bill and one announcement to make. There is a bill that I think I've talked about before, House Bill 1437, which in its original form, and there's also actually Senator Argall has a counterpart, Senate Bill 942. We're very simple bills designed to amend the Municipal Code and Ordinance Compliance Act, which was passed in, I think, the year 2000. Not many people are familiar with it. What it says is that if a buyer purchases a property with known code violations, the buyer has 18 months to fix it up. And it was a well-intentioned law that set a time frame within which the buyer had to act. The thing is, as communities became more attuned to code enforcement and to blight remediation, 18 months seemed like a pretty long time, especially when emergencies needed to be dealt with. And so the bill says changed the 18 months to 12 months and then added, or a shorter period of time if the municipality is enforcing its own property maintenance code. So for some things, it could be so simple that there's no reason to wait 18 months. You can get it done in 30 days. Or it could be so dangerous that you really can't wait and it needs to be done quickly. So again, 18 months becomes 12 months, or if the municipality is enforcing its own codes, it could be a shorter period of time. And then House Bill 1437 was recently amended to deal with a different issue, but related to inspections. And what I was told is that in some communities, I've heard of it particularly in southeastern Pennsylvania, municipalities would do pre-sale inspections, which we've encouraged, but then require the seller to make repairs prior to settlement or escrow the money for sales. And as I said, the underlying law here put the onus on the buyer. And what was happening was, as we all know, or if you've ever bought a property, the condition of the property is reflected in the sale price. And so if it's a property that needs a lot of work, you're going to have a lower sale price. Well, that means the seller doesn't have the money to do the repairs. It was actually holding up or killing transactions where the municipalities were requiring this done, or if they required an escrow, then the buyer didn't have money to do the repairs because it was tied up in escrow, or they were even withholding use and occupancy permits so that the buyer couldn't get in and make the repairs. So what the amendment does is it prohibits the escrows, and it sets up a system of temporary use and or occupancy permits depending on the level of severity of the code violations. So that while the buyer may not be able to move in right away, he or she could at least enter the property and make repairs. So from the Housing Alliance point of view, that is all good, but the amendment also addressed what was part of the original bill, which is changing the 18 months to 12 months, but eliminates that provision that says, or a shorter period if enforcing a local property maintenance or building code, a local code. And that is a concern to me, or to the Housing Alliance, I should say. So it's, generally speaking, the language of House Bill 1437, we're fine with in terms of ensuring that transactions go through. We want to continue to work on the language to make sure that municipalities have the ability to enforce their own codes. The bill was amended on second consideration on the floor of the House. It's scheduled for final vote when they return on May 2nd or during that week, and then it will go over to the Senate. So does anybody have questions on that, or has anybody experienced the problems that are being addressed with that amendment? I'd love to hear from you on that. Again, *7 if you want to unmute your phone and comment or ask a question. Okay. Well, keep you posted on that also. The last thing on my list is to let you know that the Housing Alliance is hosting a Land Bank Summit May 11th and 12th in Latrobe in Westmoreland County. April, I know you're on. You can put in a plug for all of the wonderful things that are happening in Latrobe and the many things that Latrobe is famous for, and I would encourage people to attend. If you're in the western part of the state, take advantage of the fact that we're doing something in the western part of the state. And if you're not, take a trip across this beautiful state in May and join us. The land banks and blight planning, we're going to be releasing 2 publications. We've just done webinars on. I don't know if the press release went out yet, but we have 2 new publications that will be available to attendees. One is on establishing and operating a land bank, and the other is an easy 5-step plan. I'm not getting the titles right, but a 5-step plan for developing a blight plan, and that be at the municipal or the county level. April, did you want to add anything? If you're still on,
no, just we welcome everybody, and there's talk of ending the whole summit with banana splits. So that's what's invented. So if we can make it work that way, but I would encourage everyone, if they can, to come out or send someone. Like Cindy said, there's a lot of good information. Cuyahoga County Land Bank will be there. There's a dinner the night before, so even if your travel plans, you can only join for the evening or one day, I would encourage you to do so, because I think there's going to be a lot of good information and a lot of good people to network with.
Thank you. Did you say banana splits were invented in Latrobe?
Yeah, that's what the claim of Latrobe is. It's where the banana split was invented. It's the home of Fred Rogers, as we know, Arnold Palmer, and Steeler Training Camp. So you'll probably get to see, I can't promise Arnold will be in town, but the banana split will be there.
And we'll be finishing the summit with a walking tour of land bank properties in Latrobe. And I saw some indication that in case of inclement weather, you were hoping to get Mr. Rogers' trolley?
Yeah, we'll see. We're still working on that, but yeah, when we say walking, we're going to try to keep it tight too. So, and we might have transportation, and really it's to see what can be done with land banking. You're not going to see what its final stages are, but there'll be a nice, I feel it'll be a nice workshop, hands-on kind of experience.
That's great. Thank you. Yes, and we will have representatives from other land banks around Pennsylvania. We now have 11, and it's really wonderful for me, having worked on the legislation, to watch the land banks come into being and to grow. And we have such a variety. 3 or 4 of them are countywide. 3 of them are citywide, and 2 of them, this is not adding up right, but are multi-municipal. So it can happen anywhere, any place, anytime. Your community too can have a land bank, and we'd encourage you to come out and hear what is happening and hear what's possible. Questions on land banks or on the summit? Star 7. All right, it's a quiet group today. Anything happening around the state that anybody would like to talk about, whether it's a concern that you'd like to raise or a success you'd like to share? Well, in that case, I'll let you off early, and we'll come back in May. We'll talk about budgets and see what else is doing. Thank you all.
Hey, Cindy?
Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, for next call, or maybe we can talk offline, maybe some of the possible changes to the Landlord-Tenant Act, the 2 bills.
Okay.
The 2 Dean bills.
Good idea.
The call, so I know that there's not time for those, so.
Right. And, well, real briefly, if you're still on the call, Jeff is talking about 2 bills that are in the House that amend the Landlord-Tenant Act. Let me see. House Bill 975 is the one that deals, I get the 2 mixed up. Which deals with people with disabilities or elderly? Is that 975? Okay, and that allows people to terminate a lease if they need to go into long-term care, correct?
Early, yeah. They need to get out of their current, yeah.
And the other is House Bill 1051, which deals with also early termination of a lease by victims of domestic violence or stalking. If I remember correctly, that's the one that's still in committee. A little bit of a debate over that one, and the 975 was voted out and reported to the floor of the House, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, yes, let's do a follow-up, and I will talk to you more about that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Talk to you in May. Bye.
Okay,